So nice to be with you again this week. The teachings this week is going to continue with the chakra series that I promised. Last week we spoke about opening the crown chakra. And so this week we'll be speaking about the third eye. After my talk, there'll be a speaker and then followed by group sharing and questions at the end. So again, it's so lovely to be here with each of you. And with all teachings, I'm going to invite you to come into the direct experience of it. So in this moment, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes as we begin to feel into and experience our relationship with the third eye chakra. And so it brings up this question: who am I? Am I the contents of my mind? Am I a collection of thoughts? Or am I the space in which thought arises? Am I the witness of thought? The witness of experience? Or am I the victim of experience? And so as you breathe and as you feel, I encourage you to experience directly. Right here and now, notice the space in which the sound of my voice arises. That this space is awake, it's aware. There's a silent intelligence in this space, an intelligence that requires no thought. It's not a product of thought. Who am I, truly? Beyond thought, beyond emotion, beyond personality, beyond ego. So can you feel yourself in vast, spacious awareness? Can you acknowledge that you are the witness of your thoughts, of your stories, of your personality? And as you step back into this witness, it has the potentiality to revolutionize how you see and how you know yourself, how you experience yourself. That you are the presence, the awake, aware presence. Not the age, not the form, not the body. For the age and the form and the body is always growing and changing, evolving. And so just feeling into this space, feeling into it and experiencing it directly. And so I'm going to invite you to stay with your experience, and I'm going to shift a little bit into the teachings this week. So the third eye chakra is a point of great perception. It can be the home of true nature, the home of our innate sanity, just the place where we just know good from bad, right from wrong, up from down, reality from unreality. Or the third eye can be the crystallization or catalyzation of ego, where it fully catalyzes and just becomes becomes fully lost in its story and its dream and its illusion, illusion like nature. And so this is a great question is what do you know yourself to be? Are you a character? Are you an age? Are you a gender, an ethnicity, a story, a group of memories? So where have you identified? Have you identified with ego and all the clothing or the conditioning of ego? Or have you identified with presence? This is the gift of the third eye, is as we open into what we are, we see that there's a very quiet sanity here. It's a gentle, awake awareness in every moment that can see thought, that can experience thought, that can let thought come and let it go. And we can even choose to surrender into thought, to believe in it, be lost in that story of ego. And that's a slippery slope. So the third eye chakra is one of the most powerful because it has to do with our identification, what we know ourselves to be. From another perspective, it's a doorway. So the third eye is very similar to the crown in that it's a doorway to vast, spacious awareness. It's a doorway to heavenly realms, to psychic realms. It's a doorway to experience Christ consciousness, cosmic consciousness. Vast emptiness, emptiness and fullness, emptiness as radiance, emptiness as nothingness, emptiness as the void. And so the third eye chakra, as we let go into it, as we journey into it, we can open to all sorts of what I call absolute realms, realms of absolute divinity. Christ consciousness is absolute, and so is emptiness consciousness, vast spacious awareness, and sky-like mind, where the mind, the experience of the self is as big as the sky. And again, as I'm speaking about these things, I'm going to invite you just to feel into them, to touch into them. As we open this door to this transmission, oftentimes these realms spontaneously begin to open. It's like if we were watching a horror movie right now, we could be lost in realms of fear and other mind states. Fear, anger, anxiety, just being lost in the personality and the separate sense of self. So the third eye can be a doorway to higher consciousness, or if the third eye is closed, we're just stuck in human consciousness and our conditioning. And we all know what that experience is like. The shadow of opening the third eye, the shadow of, this center, is our egoic nature. We'll start to think it's smart and wise and philosophical, and it will or it can take on states of awareness. It can take on being the witness. So the biggest mistake I see people make, especially well-trained Buddhist and well-trained non-duality folks, is their superego steps into a state of quote-unquote awareness or quote-unquote mindfulness, and it's simply the superego being mindful. And that's not real mindfulness. That's not stepping into the third eye. So if there's any sense of control or doing or efforting, we haven't fully let go. We're still holding on. And the superego is wearing, I call this the spiritual superego. So the third eye, outside the door of the third eye, is the seat of the spiritual superego, who puts on the clothes, the costume of the spiritual one, who puts on the costume of awake awareness, who knows the language, who knows the philosophy, and who thinks if we get the philosophy just right and all the vocabulary terms just right, all the Sanskrit and the whatever, we can recite, Buddhist text, that we know what awareness is. But that's the superego being aware, not awake awareness being aware. And so this is something to consider on the path of, as we're waking up and the third eye is blossoming. Is my superego still driving the steering wheel and acting like I'm awake, when really I'm just thinking or projecting that I'm awake? Well, in reality, there's fear there of trying to do it right, trying to get it right, trying to control or maintain spiritual states. Whereas awareness is vast and free and doesn't need anything to be controlled. There's room for everything to come and go, in and out. For awareness is the space. It's not the efforting doing one. And, this shadow that I'm speaking about, it can be subtle or it can be overt. And so for some of you, as you begin to open in the third eye, whether it's by choice or sincerity or surrender, or the Kundalini all of a sudden blast the third eye open, you might notice, the personality self or the egoic self come forward and feel really disoriented and scared and feeling like, oh my God, I got to control. I need to take charge. I need to get back to work. I need to get grounded. I'm going to lose my mind. And it is true. Through spiritual awakening, you do lose your mind. You lose your human mind, your lesser mind. You lose your middle school mind, or your high school mind, your college mind. And you surrender into first the adult mind, but then, the space of all mind. The space of no mind. It's another way to put it, the space of Buddha mind, Buddha nature. The Buddha nature. Sometimes when we open to the third eye, we can actually become lost in different mind states, different heavenly realms or psychic realms or bliss realms, emptiness realms, void realms. And again, these can be very frightening and bring forth the emotional nature as well. But when you rest as the space of awareness, you might notice fear is arising and there's room for fear. Bliss is arising, there's room for bliss. And there's room for witnessing a bliss. There's room to merge into bliss. There's room for bliss to come and for bliss to go. There's room for bliss, different flavors of bliss. There's just a very silent, subtle contentment type of ananda, as well as amrita, which is more juicy, thick, like honey, like bliss. And so when we step way back toward the back of the skull, awareness expands and there's room for everything. Whether it's Kundalini Shakti or fearful thoughts about the body and something being greatly wrong with the body. And there's room for the dance of Kundalini and Kriyas, and there's room and there's space to let go of control and to trust that you are one with God. And so the space of the third eye is vast, spacious freedom, beyond, beyond, beyond. And just a great question for any or for all of you is, where am I at on this path? Do I know who I am? Do I know who and what I am fundamentally? Am I experiencing this now? Or am I identified with a mind state of anger or fear or grief, sadness, anger, rage? Am I identified with chasing after bliss or trying to get the Kundalini to flow in one direction or another? Am I identified with my spiritual self and my spiritual lineage and where I think I am on the path? Am I identified with comparing mind, always comparing myself to another? or lonely mind, or abandoned mind, or whatever it is. So if you want to experience sanity and freedom on this path, the third eye chakra must be open, and you must identify and know that you are the space in which the personality arises, the space in which the human arises, the space in which the Kundalini Shakti arises. And there's great healing freedom in this realization, because when there's space, there's room for everything. When there's space, there's peace. When there's space, there's sanity. But when you identify with a small body and a small mind, you can just be like a little irritated self. That's that God is messing with, or your neighbor's messing with, or that dog is messing with, or the Kundalini is messing with. But when you know yourself as the space in which Kundalini is arising and flowing through, there's great freedom. Great freedom. So this is a fundamental part of the path. As we awaken the third eye chakra, we step back toward the back of the skull. And as you do, your consciousness, it unhooks from the prefrontal cortex, from all this thinking and mental activity. Step way back toward the back of the skull. And you immediately begin to feel more spacious, more open, and free. And so that to the extent that you rest in this place of freedom, this place of truth, is to the extent that you are sane, that you're peaceful, that you are clear, that you're connected with Buddha nature. Buddha nature. Okay. So let me just check. Wrote a couple notes. Want to make sure I didn't forget anything. Sometimes when I step more fully back into this, my mind can go quite blank, quite empty. The other thing about, as you step into this, there's so many different types of consciousness you can step into. It's not one consciousness. You can step into different forms of samadhi, different forms of emptiness and energetics and aliveness and light and brilliance and the absolute experienced in so many different ways. In a similar way, we can step into ego and be lost in a million and one different mind states. Are you the perceiver? Are you the experiencer? Or are you the victim of your experience? Are you the separate self, or are you the unified oneness self, one with all of life, the mind of God, with all the Buddhas?